Humans don't fight wars because they'd win too easily, declared Professor Vitak, his voice filled with disbelief and a hint of admiration. The room, filled with alien students from across the galaxy, fell silent, save for the hum of the ventilation system. Students from various species exchanged confused glances, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. The Galactic University of Altora was known for its rigorous discussions on interspecies ethics, but today's topic caught everyone off guard. A Young's STN warrior, pale blue skin marked with intricate designs signifying his warrior novice status, raised his hand. His tentacle-like fingers twitched in agitation. "Professor, surely you jest. Humans avoid war? This is the species that destroyed ecosystems on their planet to grow food more efficiently. They're known for violence and conquest. Why would they suddenly restrain themselves?" Professor Vitak, a towering Zorian with a metallic sheen to his skin, leaned back in his chair. His many eyes blinked in unison, and he sighed, expecting the skepticism. "Ah, young Cook," Vitak began, "your doubt is understandable. But let me explain. Humans are unique in ways that defy the evolutionary patterns we observe across the galaxy." With a wave of his hand, the professor activated a holo display. Earth materialized in the air, a beautiful sphere of blue oceans, green continents, and swirling clouds. Humans come from a world of both abundance and treachery. Their evolution was shaped by constant struggle against their environment, against each other. Despite this, they've reached a point where they choose not to engage in war, even when provoked. The room murmured, the idea seeming absurd to many. War, to most species, was a natural extension of survival and dominance. Koch remained unconvinced. "Professor, this sounds like propaganda spread by Terran diplomats. How could a species with such advanced technology capable of obliterating planets simply abstain from using it? There's no honor in that." Vitak's eyes flashed with intensity, silencing the growing whispers. "It's not about honor, Koch. It's about mercy." The word hung in the air, foreign and almost blasphemous to students raised in cultures that glorified battle. Another student, a thick-shelled Kron, spoke, his voice like grinding stones. "Mercy is weakness, a failure to seize power when one has the advantage." Vitak nodded slightly. "For many species, yes, but humans see it differently. They have the ability to wage devastating wars but choose not to. Not because they lack the will, but because they have something else, a sense of responsibility." The holo display shifted to scenes from human history. Great wars, destructive weapons, followed by images of reconstruction, treaties, and alliances. Throughout their history. Vitak continued, "Humans learned the cost of war is too high, not just in resources or lives, but in the toll it takes on the soul of their species. They understand that with great power comes great responsibility." Silence followed as students processed his words. For many, war defined their cultures. It was how they expanded and secured resources. The notion of avoiding war when one had the upper hand was alien. "Consider this," Vitak resumed. "A human fleet arrives at a contested planet. Their technology is unmatched, their soldiers trained. They could decimate the opposition, claim the planet. Instead, they send diplomats seeking a peaceful resolution." Koch's disbelief only deepened. Why? Why offer peace when they could easily take the planet and its resources? Vitak smiled knowingly. "Because humans understand something fundamental. True strength isn't in destruction, but in building and creating alliances. They know mercy is more powerful than fear in the long run." Koch visibly struggled with the idea. His life had been shaped by the belief that might makes right, that war was the ultimate expression of a species' strength. The notion that humans avoided war not out of fear but out of mercy seemed incomprehensible. But what if they're wrong? Koch pressed. What if their mercy is taken advantage of? What if their enemies grow stronger and overtake them? Vitak's eyes glimmered with a deeper understanding. "That's where you misunderstand," Vitak explained. "Humans aren't naive. They know the risks, but they also know a galaxy ruled by fear is fragile. By fostering cooperation, they create a network of allies. If ever a species rises to challenge them, humans are always prepared." The room remained silent as the weight of VT-Sac's words sank in. Make no mistake. He continued, humans are capable of great violence, but they wield power with restraint. They understand the true cost of war is in the very soul of a civilization, and they refuse to pay that price unless absolutely necessary. As the students gathered their things, Koch lingered, his mind racing. Professor, he called out, I still don't understand. What if mercy leads to their downfall? VTAC regarded him thoughtfully. If that happens, Koch, they would accept it as the cost of their principles. But humans will not fall easily, for in their mercy lies a strength many cannot comprehend. The words echoed in Koch's mind in the days that followed. He became increasingly preoccupied with the conversation. He spent hours in the university's archives, studying human history, their wars, alliances, and their navigation of galactic politics. The more he learned, the more questions arose. Why would a species capable of such devastating force hold back? Was it truly mercy or something deeper? Unable to shake his curiosity, Koch sought out VTAC again. I've been studying the humans, Koch began. I keep coming back to the same question, why would they choose mercy when they could dominate? VTAC invited him to sit, a gleam in his eyes. Koch, you're not the first to ask this. To understand, you must examine their psychology. Humans are driven by complex emotions and beliefs, unlike any species in the galaxy. They are capable of violence, yes, but also great empathy. They value fairness, giving others a chance to thrive. This duality explains their decision to avoid unnecessary wars. Koch frowned. But that sounds illogical. Why risk their survival for the sake of others? VTAC leaned forward. You must understand their history of survival. Humans evolved on a planet full of dangers, where cooperation often overcame challenges. Over time, this cooperation became part of their culture. They learned that by showing mercy, they could achieve greater things. A holo screen activated, showing a group of human soldiers standing shoulder to shoulder with other species. When humans first ventured into the galaxy, they were met with suspicion. Instead of responding with overwhelming force, they sought alliances. They offered technology, resources, and respect, knowing true strength comes from unity, not division. Koch stared at the image, conflicted. But doesn't that make them vulnerable? What if an ally turns against them? Wouldn't it be better to assert dominance from the start? VTAC shook his head. They know there's always a risk, but by building trust, they create a network of allies invested in their survival. It's a long-term strategy requiring patience and mercy, but it's also allowed them to thrive. Koch sat in silence, digesting this new perspective. His entire life had been guided by the principle that power must be wielded aggressively to ensure survival. The idea that mercy could be a strategic move, that trust could be more valuable than dominance, was foreign. But it resonated with something deep within him. So you're saying their mercy is a calculated move, Koch said slowly. A way to ensure their survival by making others dependent on them? VTAC nodded. In a way, yes, but it's not purely self-serving. Humans genuinely believe in the potential for cooperation and growth. They believe that by uplifting others, they create a better future for everyone, including themselves. It's a belief many species find difficult to grasp, especially those raised to see strength only in conquest. Koch's mind whirled with conflicting ideas. The notion that power could be used to uplift rather than subjugate was a concept he had never entertained. But what happens, Koch asked, his voice quieter now, when humans are pushed too far? When mercy is no longer an option? VTAC's expression darkened, and for the first time, Koch saw a glint of something unsettling in his professor's many eyes. That, VTAC said gravely, is the question that troubles many of us. Humans are patient, but their patience has limits. When pushed to their breaking point, they can be as ruthless as any species. Perhaps more so. Because they understand the full cost of their actions better than most. If forced into a corner, they will fight with a ferocity that is unmatched. They do not seek war, but when they are forced into it, they end it decisively. Koch felt a shiver run down his spine. The image of humans, both merciful and terrifying, began to take root in his mind. So they are capable of great destruction, Cook said softly. But they choose not to unless they have no other choice. Vitak nodded, his tone somber. Exactly. That's what makes them so formidable. They don't desire power for its own sake, they desire peace. But when that peace is threatened, they are relentless. It's their last resort, but when it comes to it, there are few in the galaxy who can stand against them. Cook sat back in his chair, his thoughts a whirlwind. The complexity of human nature, the delicate balance they maintained between strength and mercy, was almost overwhelming. Thank you, Professor Cook said, finally, his voice subdued. I have much to think about. In the days that followed, Cook found himself preoccupied with thoughts of humans, their strength, their restraint, and the way they wielded power. His curiosity led him to volunteer for an interspecies exchange program, where he would observe a human military exercise firsthand. The SDN Empire was eager to learn more about the enigmatic humans, and Cook's newfound insights made him an ideal candidate for the mission. A few weeks later, Cook found himself aboard a CSDN scout vessel at the edge of human-controlled space, ready to observe their military might up close. As his ship approached a designated observation point, Cook sat in the command chair, his eyes fixed on the massive human fleet displayed on the holoscreen. Thousands of ships, battlecruisers, frigates, carriers formed an impressive array, their sleek designs and formidable weaponry clear even from this distance. Cook's heart raced as the exercise began, imagining the devastation the humans could unleash. Yet, as the maneuvers unfolded, something unexpected happened. Instead of simulating an all-out assault, the human fleet focused on defense, coordination, and precision targeting. Their tactics were measured, designed to minimize collateral damage and disable rather than destroy. Cook watched in awe as the humans completed complex maneuvers with surgical precision. It was a far cry from the brute force he had expected. As the exercise reached its climax, an AI-controlled enemy fleet launched a surprise attack. The humans responded swiftly, overwhelming the enemy, but once again they showed restraint. Instead of annihilating the AI fleet, they neutralized it systematically, disabling ships and capturing them rather than destroying them outright. Cook's eyes widened as he realized the humans had concluded the entire exercise without a single unnecessary loss. It was a display of power, but more than that, it was a display of control. Every action was deliberate, every decision calculated. The humans were constantly aware of the consequences of their power and wielded it with a reverence Cook had never witnessed before. As the exercise ended, a beep from his communicator startled Cook. An incoming message from the human fleet appeared on his holoscreen. To his surprise, the message was not a warning or threat, but an invitation. SDN vessel, we are aware of your presence, came the calm, authoritative voice of a human officer. We invite you to dock with our command ship for further discussion. We believe there is much our species can learn from one another. Cook hesitated, glancing at his crew, who looked equally surprised. The humans had detected them, despite their advanced cloaking technology, yet extended an invitation rather than demanding their departure. Very well, Cook replied cautiously. We will comply. As the SDN vessel approached the human command ship, Cook's mind raced. The human ship loomed before them, a massive structure bristling with weapons and shield generators. It was both intimidating and awe-inspiring. Upon docking, Cook and his small team were greeted by a human officer who led them through the pristine corridors of the ship. The atmosphere was calm, almost serene, a stark contrast to the tension Cook felt within himself. Soon they were ushered into a briefing room, where a group of high-ranking human officers awaited them. Admiral Lawrence, the officer who had initially contacted them, gestured for Cook and his team to sit. We've been monitoring your approach, the Admiral began, his tone polite but firm. We're aware of the SDN Empire's curiosity about our military capabilities. We welcome your interest, but we believe it's important to address any misconceptions. Cook leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. Misconceptions? Admiral Lawrence nodded. Yes, for example, the misconception that we are weak because we avoid unnecessary wars, or that our mercy is a sign of hesitation or fear. Cook felt a pang of guilt as he realized this had been his exact line of thinking. "And what is the truth, Admiral?" he asked quietly. Lawrence's gaze was steady. "The truth is that we value life our own and that of others. We've seen the damage unchecked aggression can cause, both in our history and across the galaxy." The Admiral continued, "We've chosen a different path, one that prioritizes peace, cooperation, and the careful use of force. But don't mistake that for weakness. When we are forced to fight, we do so with all the power at our disposal. We aim to end conflicts swiftly and decisively." With as little loss of life as possible, Cook absorbed the Admiral's words, finally understanding the full picture. Humans were not weak or naive. They were perhaps the most dangerous species in the galaxy because they fully understood the consequences of their actions. They chose restraint not out of fear, but out of wisdom. "I see," Cook said quietly, the pieces falling into place. "You avoid war out of mercy, but also out of wisdom. You understand that true power isn't just the ability to destroy, but the ability to choose not to." Lawrence nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "Exactly. Mercy is not a weakness, Cook. It is the strength to see beyond the immediate, to consider the long-term consequences. It's the ability to hold back when others would not, and in that, we've found a way to thrive in a galaxy where cooperation is valued over conquest." Cook felt a deep respect for the humans growing within him. This was a species that had mastered the art of war but chose peace whenever possible. It was a lesson Cook would take back to the STAN Empire, one that could reshape how his people viewed power and conflict. As Cook and his team prepared to leave, Admiral Lawrence extended his hand. "I hope this exchange has been enlightening, Cook. Perhaps it's the beginning of a new understanding between our species." Cook took the Admiral's hand, feeling the strength in the human's grip. "It has been more than enlightening," Admiral Cook replied. "It has been transformative. I will return to my people with a new perspective, one that I hope will lead to a future where mercy is seen as a strength, not a weakness." As Cook and his team departed from the human command ship and returned to their vessel, he couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. The galaxy was vast and often unforgiving, but with species like the humans leading by example, there was a chance for something greater, a future beyond endless cycles of war and conquest. Looking back at the human fleet one last time, Cook understood now that true power wasn't just in the ability to wage war, but in the wisdom to choose peace. Weeks had passed since Cook's encounter with the humans, but the memory lingered in his mind like an unresolved question. He found himself replaying the words of Admiral Lawrence and Professor Vitak, trying to make sense of the philosophy that guided human behavior. Despite his time among them, there were still aspects of their nature that eluded him. He had returned to the STN Empire, where his report had sparked much debate among the leadership. Some were intrigued by the humans' approach to power, while others saw it as a weakness that would one day be exploited. Cook, however, was no longer sure where he stood. On the one hand, his warrior upbringing made it difficult to accept the idea that mercy could be a form of strength. On the other, his experiences had shown him that humans were far from weak. They were a paradox, a species capable of unimaginable destruction, yet they chose not to use it unless absolutely necessary. And when they did, Cook was certain they would be terrifying. It was this balance, this careful restraint, that continued to fascinate him. He had seen their power firsthand, and he knew they were not to be underestimated. Back in his quarters, Cook reflected on the implications for his own people. The STN Empire had long prided itself on its military strength and its ability to conquer and dominate weaker species. For centuries, this had been the guiding principle of their civilization: might makes right. But now Cook was beginning to see the limitations of that philosophy. The humans had shown him that power was more than brute force, it was also about knowing when not to use it. Could the STN Empire learn from this? Could they adopt a more nuanced view of strength, one that didn't rely solely on conquest? These questions haunted Cook as he attended council meetings, where the Empire's leaders debated their next steps. The galaxy was becoming more interconnected, and the STNT Empire's expansionist policies were starting to meet resistance. There were whispers of alliances forming against them, coalitions of species that saw the Empire as a threat. Koch realized that the STN Empire could either adapt to this new reality or continue down the path of isolation and aggression, a path that might eventually lead to their downfall. One day, Koch was summoned to a private audience with General Thraeath, the supreme commander of the STN military. The general was a towering figure, with the battle-hardened features of a warrior who had seen countless campaigns. Koch had always admired Thraeath's strategic mind and his unflinching dedication to the Empire's cause. Yet, as he entered the general's chamber, he couldn't help but wonder how the old warrior would react to the ideas he had brought back from human space. Koch, General Thraeath began, his voice gruff but curious. I've read your report on the humans. You've seen their fleets, their soldiers, and their tactics. You've spoken with their leaders. Tell me, what do you make of them? Are they a threat to our empire? Koch hesitated for a moment, choosing his words carefully. They are not a threat in the way we might expect, he said slowly. They do not seek to expand their territory or impose their will on others through force. But they are formidable, nonetheless. Their power lies in their restraint. They build alliances, foster cooperation, and when necessary, they fight with overwhelming force. They are not to be underestimated, General. Thraeath narrowed his eyes, his expression unreadable. Restraint, he repeated, the word foreign to him. You think they hold back out of some sense of morality? That they wouldn't use their full strength against us if provoked? They would, Koch replied, his voice steady. But only if they had no other choice. They value peace and stability, and they will go to great lengths to preserve it. However, if they are pushed too far, if they believe there is no other option, they will unleash their full might. And when they do, it will be devastating. They understand the cost of war better than most species, which is why they avoid it when possible. But they are not afraid of it. The general leaned back in his chair, his gaze piercing as he studied Koch. And what do you propose we do with this knowledge, Koch? Do you suggest we abandon our way of life, our conquests, and adopt this mercy you speak of? Koch met the general's gaze, knowing that his next words could determine the course of his career and possibly the future of the Empire. I'm not suggesting we abandon who we are, he said carefully. But I believe we need to evolve. The galaxy is changing, General. Species are coming together in ways they haven't before. Old rivalries are giving way to new alliances. If we continue to rely solely on conquest, we risk becoming isolated, surrounded by enemies. The humans have shown us that strength can come from unity as well as from dominance. We can still be powerful, but perhaps we need to consider a broader strategy, one that includes diplomacy and cooperation. For a long moment, General Thraeath said nothing. Koch could feel the tension in the room, the weight of centuries of tradition pressing down on him. Finally, the general spoke. You're asking us to change the very foundation of our civilization, to trust species we've spent centuries subjugating. That's no small request, Koch. I know, Koch said quietly. But if we don't adapt, we may find ourselves outmatched by those who have. Thraeath was silent for a long time, his eyes distant as he considered Koch's words. When he finally spoke again, his voice was softer, more contemplative. Perhaps there's something to what you're saying, Koch, eh? The galaxy is changing. We've always believed in the power of the sword, but maybe there's power in the hand that offers peace as well. Koch nodded, sensing a shift in the old warrior's thinking. It wasn't a complete acceptance of the ideas he had brought back from the humans, but it was a start. And sometimes a small shift was all that was needed to set a new course. As Koch left the general's chamber, he felt a strange mix of relief and uncertainty. He had planted the seeds of a new way of thinking, but whether they would take root in the STN Empire remained to be seen. The road ahead was uncertain, and the challenges were immense. But Koch couldn't shake the feeling that a new chapter in the Empire's history was about to begin, one that might be shaped by mercy, as much as by might. And as he walked the halls of the Imperial Palace, Koch couldn't help but wonder if one day the STN Empire and the humans might find themselves not as enemies, but as allies, working together to build a galaxy where strength was measured not by the power to destroy, but by the wisdom to build.